Hi, I'm David Manty with the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and with me today is Matt Cohen, founder of Lively Spirits. Thank you very much for joining me today, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, before we get started, if you could please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also do us a big favor by giving us a positive review and email the podcast. You can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, Matt, I'd like to start a little bit about your history and how you got into the cannabis business. I mean, it sounded like you kind of got in on the ground floor.
Yeah. I was an activist in college when I was going to University of Colorado in 96, 97, 98. And we produced a newsletter for the drug war, educating the students about the drug war called The Enforcer. And in The Enforcer, I read about Jeff Jones in Oakland, who had pioneered the Oakland Buyers Club and was now being in a civil injunction from the Clinton administration. And it made me aware that there were dispensaries, at least 2 or 3 at the time, that were pushing the limit. And we flew out to California and met with California NORML and said, hey, we're college students. It looks like it's legal here. There's dispensaries. Can we grow for them? Mm-hmm. And they kind of all looked at each other, and they happened to have been the authors of Proposition 215 were all in the room, and they were said, hey, talk to Mr. Robert Raish. And we met with Robert Raish and formed corporations, and the rest is kind of history. So yeah, I got in at the very beginning in 98 as a grower, and then as a dispensary operator and a trade association founder, consultant, and several other aspects of the business.
So what brought you to psychotropic spirits?
Yes. Well, it was, in my career as a cannabis business person, I was always thinking, hey, if you could ever drink this stuff, and have it behave like alcohol, it would be the Holy Grail of cannabis products, because it would open up, it would become much more accessible to the masses. Not everybody wants to smoke. Not everybody's had a great experience with an edible before. And then I was hired into a company as a cannabis expert, a nutraceutical company, and they had some technology. And I said, I don't think you guys realize what you have here. And we married some of the technologies together and was able to generate the first Purejuana that was ever created. And I ended up taking over the company. It was a tumultuous beginning, like many of these cannabis companies, with too many founders involved and hard capital to come by. And I ended up taking over the company and deciding that the technology was novel enough and the product was unique enough that it was truly able to power a cocktail and deliver the true botanical essence of the plant. To me, that was the spirits category, right? Mm-hmm. That we were creating the spirits category. And with our tech, we can do this with other plant psychotropics. So we had the concept that Lively Spirits would become a house of psychotropic spirits brands, Purejuana being the first one. Mm-hmm. The power cocktails that are alternatives to alcohol cocktails.
And so when I hear spirits, I think bottles and cans in a liquor department, but these are packets of powder. Tell me a little bit about the product specifically.
Yeah, the product comes in a powder form factor. Mm-hmm. And the reason we are keeping it there, the reason we're sticking with that, is because we value the essence of the plant over everything, right? So we don't want to compromise on any one terpene or flavonoid or anything like that. So it's extremely important to retain all that. Water is the enemy. Water degrades these types of volatile compounds, and by nature, we're not a distilled product, right? We don't have alcohol in there to preserve the product. So it turns out that powder actually is the best form factor for delivering the pure essence of the plant in a cocktail. So we're calling it a dry spirit. Okay. We're pioneering the dry spirit category.
Okay. So how do you make a dry spirit, and how do you steer clear of some of the issues that other beverages and other people trying to make, powders and oils that have gone into beverages that have had some stumbling blocks in the past?
Yes. Well, how do you make it's one question. And let me start right there. Where it all starts with the right cultivar. Right, not all these cultivars are going to taste good in a drink. We found out that It's also non-obvious which ones are the best. So there's been a tremendous amount of R&D around what those strains are. So identifying the cultivars, managing them through our nursery partners, and then feeding them to our contract farms that grow to our specifications, sun-grown, organic best practices, and grown to peak ripeness is critical. So we walk the fields with the farmers and make sure we all agree that, yeah, this is full expression of the plant. We're not talking about the trim. We're not talking about the smalls. This is a whole plant. This quality of flower is top shelf sun-grown flower that goes in there. We freeze it, haul it off. We separate the live concentrate. And then with the live concentrate, we roll it into a proprietary emulsion that is all organic and tastes good, and it's food grade, and you understand when you read a label what those ingredients are. And then we dry it on a proprietary drying system that dries the emulsion into the powder at ambient temperatures. And that's the real trick right there, is to preserve all the compounds. We've been able to get them from the field through the extract to now a stable powder, and the powder is very stable.
What were the strains that you chose to work with?
We're working with Tangy, Forbidden Fruit, Venom OG, Blue Dream, Super Lemon Haze, XJ13, Strawberry Banana, Strawberry Cheesecake. Strains that are have a reputation in the market as being good flower, but also turned out to taste really good in the drink. And more importantly than even taste, has a really good high. Because that's another thing that with this technology is that this is the only way to consume a strain without combustion and really get the full essence of the plant. So you can be drinking on Blue Dream, and just like for most people, Blue Dream is very uplifting, and you actually get quite racy on drinking Blue Dream. Okay. If you drink on Venom OG, you're going in the complete other direction. So we can really curate the cocktail experience to the occasion.
So what was that R&D process like?
Years. We've spent years developing the technology and identifying the strains, sourcing the strains, testing the strains, doing all the small batches and drinking them with our expert panel. There's a large group of people that have been drinking on this stuff now for a couple of years that have weighed in. So it's been a lot of investment.
Is it, when you're developing a product like this and you have a history like you do, particularly with cultivation, do you find yourself getting too picky or particular when it comes to other people growing a product that you're going to be using?
You mean, am I a hard ass on the farmers?
Well, depending on who you talk to in the industry, people are either very particular as to how they like their cultivation operations, or sometimes there's more of a commodity for people.
Turns out I was the co-founder of the Emerald Growers Association, which is now the California Growers Association. So I have deep roots in the Emerald Triangle. I lived there for 20 years and know a lot of farmers. A lot of those farmers were the farmers I contracted to Harborside Health Center in the early days before Harborside built their own farms. So those relationships have gone a long ways. We came up growing together. A lot of our best practices were the same. So I started off with farms that were already, growing the way I used to grow.
When, what date, when is your specific start date, and where do you do your manufacturing?
The product officially launched in May. We were dabbling with a couple dispensaries before that, but it officially launched in May. We manufacture in Woodland, California, and we are focused heavily on LA right now. We do a lot of events in LA. We do bar takeovers. We dry up the bar, no more alcohol. We're serving cannabis cocktails, giving people a alternative to alcohol experience.
What is the difference between the alcohol experience, and then what is the difference between other experiences you mentioned previously, like edibles or just smoking it? I
think that it's apples to oranges, right? Alcohol gives you an alcohol buzz. Cannabis gives you a cannabis buzz. I will say that Purejuana has its own unique buzz. Every sip you take of that cocktail, you're reintroducing all of those approximately 100 plus unique compounds in that strain that we've weaponized. that are now getting absorbed into your endocannabinoid system each time you're re-upping with each sip. Whereas like with a premium joint, it's the first couple of hits that vaporizes all the terpenes and the flavonoids. So you get that really euphoric part of the high at the beginning of the joint, right? And as a grower, I was always a snob, and I was always just smoke the first third of the joint and throw the rest of the way, just because of that. But now you can sip it, and it's renewed with every sip, which gives you a much more euphoric and energetic kind of high. You don't get the crash that you get from smoking. You don't have the heavy weight and the kind of just flat, same old high you get from edibles. Like edible highs are always the same high, right? It doesn't really matter. You're always getting that same 11 hydroxy high. Smoking, it very much goes to your head. You kind of got to get a little bit headier when you smoke. Purejuana finds a nice middle ground between all this, and it has its own unique effect. I find it to be I used to be quite a heavy drinker. I've always been a heavy smoker, and now I find myself, I don't drink alcohol anymore, and I barely smoke cannabis anymore because I'm able to consume it this way, and I prefer it this way.
Okay. And I noticed that there were 3 different packet sizes or doses. Why did you choose those specific doses? And has it presented any challenges in terms of like filling the packets or manufacturing the packets?
It's extremely hard to manufacture. This is a very, very hard product to manufacture. It's the most difficult I can imagine. When I look at the supply chain of all the other products out there, getting the dosing right, critical. To get back to your first question, why 2.5 milligrams, why 5 milligrams, and why 10 milligrams? Well, what we've found is that there's a wide spectrum of tolerance out there in the market. And you can see what Can is doing. They're ready to drink seltzers out there. They have a 2 milligram. It's a very low microdose, and that's perfect for a lot of people. So we wanted to be able to serve that market. But then there are people that, they don't even feel that. Right. And they need something more. And that's when we introduced the 10s. So we find that we're selling all 3 of them. There's demand for all 3 different subsets. And, I'll even do a double of a red sometimes if I want to get right there really quickly, after work. But then sometimes it's Sunday morning brunch, and I'd actually like to have a more terpier high, a little more euphoric and not have so much heaviness from the THC. And I'll do like a double green in the Pellegrino at a brunch. And I sober up quicker. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. We have a lot of SKUs because we have, 5 or 6 strains in the market right now, times 3 different potencies. And we are always aiming to try to reduce the amount of SKUs. But the truth is we need that versatility to power this cannabis cocktail occasion.
So tell me about some of those challenges that you have manufacturing the product, packaging the product.
Man. Well, again, we invented the drying machine that did this. So that was a huge lift. Developing the emulsion, we started right out of the gate saying it has to be organic. It has to taste good. And that limited us severely. So we had to develop our own emulsion recipes, and we went through, again, we're on version 25 probably by now. So there's just been a lot of time in the lab, make it, drink it, because this isn't the type of product you can just hire a scientist, a pharmacokinetic scientist to just evaluate what's supposed to be happening. You have 100-something compounds going into your complex endocannabinoid system. And it's much more, the way to do this is through experiential research, not pharmacokinetic research is the opinion we have about it.
Okay.
So yes, many long hours in the lab, lots of strains that we grew that were duds, and just trial and error.
What about actually filling the packets and making sure all of that's accurate, and making sure, when you're sealing some of these packages, you're not disturbing the product?
It's machines.
It's all automated.
There was a lot of trial and error with the stick pack machine to get that to work right. It's essentially customized it to make it work right and to get the dosing right. There was getting it to fill into the stick at the right volumetric amount was really quite a big challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So we filter 1 gram and we know exactly how much THC is in there and how much terpenes are in there and everything. And we toggle the THC for every stick. But all of those shots or sticks are the exact same profile of the strain. The only thing that's different is the THC.
Okay.
So they all taste the same.
Talking about taste, do you have like a flavorist on staff, or how do you sort of quality check the flavor?
It's the expert panel,
Yeah.
right? We have a large group of people that have been drinking on this product now for 2 years. And we do blind studies too, blind taste test studies.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tremendous amount of quality control from, the farm through the extraction and through the manufacturing process to make sure that it's homogeneous, and that this batch of Blue Dream blends is homogenized with another batch of Blue Dream. If there's any slight variation, again, we're working with clones. We're working with farms that grow on the same best practices, and we're following the exact same best practices all the way through to the final SKU.
What has been the initial reaction since you launched the product?
Very good. But it's interesting. You can't, if you start talking to somebody about it, they just kind of like, really? Like, that's possible? Like, they have a hard time understanding that's even possible. When we invite people to these events where we bar takeover, and they come up to the bar and they say, yeah, I'll order a Blue Dream Bloody Mary or whatever. And they start drinking it and they feel it right away. And they have a second drink and they feel that bump up on the second drink, and they feel the difference in high, and they're in that bar atmosphere. That's when the real aha moment happens. I've had several people come up to me and been like, man, this is a game changer. This is an amazing product. But it's like with all disruptive products, it's like, Henry Ford, if he'd listened to his customers, he'd have built them a faster horse. So how long did it take him to get them to realize, hey, get off your horse and try out my Model T? It takes a minute to get people to see this new world.
So what are some of your efforts to get people to notice this new world? I noticed some of the things you were doing were partnering with bartenders to create signature cocktails. What are some of the other outreach programs that you guys are working on?
The biggest thing we're doing is getting people to drink it in a bar atmosphere. So bar takeovers are happening across LA. We take over the bar for like 3 hours. We bring in a famous mixologist. We serve awesome cocktails, and we have a growing events list that we invite people to. We do a lot of public relations around that as well. And then, of course, tapping into that already established alcohol mixology world. Those folks, when they try it, they're blown away. I mean, they're like, this is a completely new thing, a new versatile thing that I can make cocktails with. So it's really the combination of those things. We also do a lot of promotion online as well.
Is it something that bars or bartenders would need a special license to serve?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me that. So, the alcohol bar world is a federally and state regulated world. And I don't see cannabis getting served alongside alcohol anytime soon. But we're fortunate in California that West Hollywood and some other places have pioneered social consumption lounge licenses. I think the original intent of those licenses were to be like Amsterdam, right? Let's smoke joints and hang out. Some folks down in LA have been more progressive thinking than that. Let's partner with a Michelin star chef. Let's infuse the foods. But the more I talk with lounge owners down there, the real way to monetize those lounges is serving cocktails.
Okay.
That's a much more profitable way to go. So we're trying to partner with social consumption lounges in West Hollywood and other areas to really start to open bars that actually serve, these Purejuana cocktails.
How many retail outlets are you in?
I'd have to look in the ballpark of 20 to 30-ish approximately.
What's the breakdown in terms of brick and mortar sales versus e-commerce for you?
E-commerce is winning at the moment. And we believe that's because a lot of e-commerce is growing out of our events, right? So the folks are learning, they're learning about us usually through public relations. That gets them to come to the website, which then gets them to learn about the events. They come to the event. It's a free event. They get indoctrinated in the product. They fall in love with the product. Then they start ordering it online. So we prioritize that, but we also have a sales team that's opening up dispensaries as well.
So what was the tumultuous beginning of the company? It sounded like you had too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak.
Well, at the time when we founded the company, it was there was a lot of founders involved, and it was a frothy market in Canada, and the valuations were crazy. And we'd come across this tech, and we were the only game in town at that time. Mm-hmm. So the former CEO had thought that he had had the only game in town, right? So we were trying to partner with the AB InBevs of the world, right? And the big Canadian companies that were, Constellation Brands and so forth. So we spent a ton of effort trying to do that, and spent a lot of money on R&D in that area. And it was just a very high risk way to go, very capital intensive way to go. And then the bubble in Canada popped, and capital wasn't so easy to come by anymore. That's the long and short of it. Mm-hmm. And then when me and my partner Parker Steele took over, we wanted to focus, and we thought it was easier to focus on a consumer packaged good than to try to be an ingredient brand to the world, like a NutraSweet kind of play. Mm-hmm. So that's where we landed.
How many people? How many employees do you have at the company?
20, 25.
Okay. Do you have any plans to vertically integrate? So instead of working, with the nurseries and the contract farmers, any plans to go vertical in your future?
Yeah, vertical integration in this business has always been about you grow it, you sell it, right? And I think vertical integration for us would look differently. I think vertical integration for us would be more like a brewery, right? Mm-hmm. Where we make the drink and we sell and serve the drink. So if there was an opportunity for us to open a Purejuana bar, like in say West Hollywood, that would be something we would be certainly focused on. And it's something that I'm actively working on all the time.
Okay. Are you specifically focusing on the California market, or have you looked into other states?
We're completely focused on the California market. We think that, if you win in California, you win everywhere. And I think that a product like this would be really hasty to expand too fast with. Mm-hmm. This is not another gummy or a clone you can move to another indoor grow. It'd be like trying to yank Mondavi out of a Napa and move them to Illinois. It's just not the same thing. The farm matters mm-hmm. to this product, quality of the input material, the cost of the input material. And then of course the capital infrastructure for a company like this is really big too. There's a couple $1 million in equipment just sitting in Woodland right now. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to focus on just leading the premium cocktail category in California, and keep watching what's happening with this Schumer Bill.
True. Could you tell us what the price points are for each, the 2.5, the 5, and the 10, and how you feel in terms of cost competitiveness?
Yeah. So we sell these in boxes of 10 drinks, and the boxes, the greens, which is the 2.5, sell for about 18 MSRP. The yellows, which are 5 milligrams, sell for about $20 MSRP, and the reds, which are 10 milligrams, sell for about $23 MSRP. So you've got a spectrum from $1.80 to $2.30 per drink, mm-hmm. right? If you were to compare that to the other low cost, ready to drink products out there, like Can, for example, they sell for approximately $4 a can, right? Mm-hmm. And that can has 2 megs in it and 4 megs of CBD. We have 2.5 megs in our greens, and all the terpenes and all the cannabinoids and so forth. So you get a lot of value there for half the price, with a lot more versatility and a much better high.
Right. No, that's what I was thinking immediately too. Was, if you could get 10 drinks for that price point, you're doing pretty good anywhere, or you're at just a really good dive bar.
Yeah, well, we're positioning this to empower the lounges. We're positioning this to compete with alcohol, not with what will people pay in the cannabis market.
Hmm.
We decided on a margin that was a margin that we could grow from,
Hmm.
and we kept everything as low as the price as low as we possibly could.
When you talk about it competing with alcohol, sort of when I think of consuming alcohol, I think of like trying to have like a drink an hour. And I mean, depending on the situation, that certainly varies. But how does this sort of compare with that? Is that, sort of a drink that you're just gonna let hang by your side and sort of sip slowly over time, or is it kind of to each their own?
It's just like alcohol.
Yeah.
That's the best way to explain it. We're not going to get into the onset is 1 minute, 5 minute, whatever. It's if you're drinking this stuff and you're used to drinking alcohol, it behaves very similar to alcohol.
But not the hangover.
But no hangover. Yeah. I mean, I've drank on this stuff pretty heavy before and had some fog the next morning, but after a shower and a coffee, I'm fine. But that's heavy, heavy usage.
Um, you've been in dispensaries, you've grown, you've been an activist with on various different groups. How does this role compare in terms of, difficulty?
Well, I've been doing this cannabis thing for a long time and kind of a jack of all trades, I suppose. And these days, I'm more so an entrepreneur and businessman, and it feels very natural to me because it's somewhat a culmination of my life's work, really.
Okay.
The 20 years in the business, but it's also the hardest thing I've ever done.
Hmm.
Absolutely, the market's it's a tough market anyway, with the taxes and the large distributors kind of, controlling what goes on shelves, and a lot of consolidation at the retail level. And then, yeah, this is also a new category we're trying to build right now. So that's difficult.
Hmm.
Making the product was really difficult. And finding capital, to scale something like this is difficult. So we have a tremendous amount of challenges, but we've been getting through them, and some of the biggest challenges are all behind us now. So that's good.
Well, I've heard from other people in the industry that, sort of well saturated markets like California or maybe even Colorado is something where it might be easier to launch a new product category. Do you find that to be true?
Meaning it would be easier to launch here in California than in Colorado?
No, like, or basically that when states kind of come online, anything sells. And, we're in an oversaturated market or a saturated market that's it's been legal for a while. People might be more interested or open to new product categories, because it's something new.
Yeah, I think that's true. I also have a friend back east that runs a bottling line in Maine, and they've been doing great selling ready to drink beverages in Maine too.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think the innovation, the first movers, the early adopters, there are a lot of them in California. I mean,
Yeah.
this is where the trends are getting set for the most part.
So focusing on the industry and kind of in general, you mentioned the Schumer Bill. What are some of your expectations for the market, let's say within the next year and the next 5 years?
That Schumer bill, I mean, I think that if we can get banking to loosen up, everything changes because, all of a sudden, institutional capital shows up. One of the biggest Achilles heels of the industry has been access to capital, cost of capital. And in addition to that, publicly traded alcohol companies can't touch this, because of the banking issues. You free up the banking issues, you have institutional capital, and then you have companies like, Constellation Brands, can actually now invest in companies on the U.S. side of the border.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to change a lot for companies like myself, like Purejuana and Lively Spirits. I also think it's going to move the needle on full legalization as well, because it's not just us banging our heads against the wall in DC as a lobby. It's now going to become the bankers, because now the bankers they're getting a piece of the action. So I think it's
Right.
going to accelerate things quite a bit.
What were some of the things that you fought for early on in your advocacy that the industry is yet to attain?
Well, there's nothing that really comes to mind. So you're saying things that I was shooting for as an activist that really were not pulling off in this new,
yeah, or I mean, or even the opposite of that, things that you maybe thought were a little pie in the sky, but actually wound up becoming legal.
Nothing really comes to mind. I mean, my days at Emerald Growers Association, it was a real struggle with, the stakeholders up there, because there was smaller farms, medium-sized farms, larger farms. Everybody had a different perspective on what sustainable was and what a big farm was. But I think, and it was difficult to get everybody to be aligned back then. I think that's part of why California is such a patchwork. On the regulatory side, is there's so many different stakeholders with different opinions and so forth. But I'm happy to see that, if you've been able to scale your sustainable organic farm, and you're able to get a foothold in the business. That was something that was important to me in the early days. And I'm seeing brands like Humboldt's Finest, they're doing it. There's several companies up in the Emerald Triangle that are pulling it off, which is really cool. I'm glad, I think that, access, the cost of medicine hasn't gone up, which is great. One of the things I was worried about with, as a medical marijuana activist, is that as soon as recreational came, that, the governments are all going to be about the taxes and they're not going to care about the patients anymore. But I think that, the prices are still pretty good, and the quality is also good of a lot of products out there. I think there's a decent amount of selection. So I think that worked out pretty well. Does that answer your question? That's about as best as I can answer.
Yeah, no, it does. And I also was curious, now you call yourself an entrepreneur. You are an entrepreneur. Is Lively Spirits the end game, or do you still have you still holding a couple of cards that you're hoping to play?
I would like it to be, I think I would like it because I could have a lot of fun with this. I mean, there's psilocybins right around the corner. There's other plants that the drug war has made illegal that are getting freed, that I think giving accessibility to the masses in a form factor that works would be beneficial for humanity. I think it's a good thing, as a healthy thing. So I think there's a lot of fun stuff we can do. I really love the team that we have, and they're very excited about what the future holds for us. So I'd love to grind on Lively for quite a long time.
Is there anything else that we might have left out, or anything in particular that you want to make sure that our audience knows about Lively Spirits or Purejuana?
Get out there and try it. Go to purejuana.com, sign up for the newsletter, sign up for the events, come to an event. They're free. That's how you learn about why this is such a cool product, and join the cannabis cocktail community with us.
When's your next event?
August 12th in Venice Beach at the Rose Room, and you can sign up online.
Okay. About how many people do you typically host?
The last one we did in Hollywood at the North End was 125 people, which was pretty much capacity of that bar, and everybody drank us dry. This time we're going to go a little bit bigger. I think we're going to push up to 200, and we have some other events that are coming up in September that will be even bigger.
Well, that's very exciting. Good luck on the next event, man.
Thanks, David. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for joining me today, Matt. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely, anytime.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Matt. I really do appreciate it. Before we get rolling, if you could make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by giving the podcast a positive review. Or if you want to reach the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. For Matt, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll catch you next week. Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.